Hello, so welcome to the Zeitgeist Movement radio show. Thank you for joining us. My name's Dan Lloyd. Maybe you might know me from online under the name Rough Styles. That's my music name. I'm a rapper. But the deal is that music on its own is not enough for me. And I've never wanted to separate myself from, everything that's interesting in the world. On a basic level, and on a more focused level, I've always had a strong humanitarian interest, and just a feeling inside myself since I was younger that I wanted to see the world sane in some shape or form. So this whole bubble of critical thinking has become a huge deal for me in the last few years, and it's been a great journey. Just introduce everybody else we got here.
Hi, my name is Carlos. And I'm into critical thinking. So, even though some people might not agree.
My name's Vivak. I'm from Cardiff. We're all, I should mention, members of the Zeitgeist Cardiff chapter, and this is where this whole broadcast is coming from. Hi.
My name's Martin. I'm from Zeitgeist Cardiff too. Been for last 2 or 3 years. About two, yeah.
Yeah, we're about 2 years
Since
old.
we are about 2 years old. Hey, we've been through a lot together. I hope we're gonna be through more in the future. And what were you saying, Styles?
Okay, let me just wiggle this mic. It might make some noise, which you'll have to allow for me. There you go, that's okay. So yeah, what I want to do personally today is give a story of Zeitgeist Cardiff so far, hopefully as something for people to draw from. When I was at London Z Day, I caught a sense of some people's frustration with not being able to get things going, which doesn't necessarily apply to other Zeitgeist groups around the world. As well, but it was just something that made me think, well, if I could give a rundown of how things have been from the start to the finish, if people can take something from it to apply to their own activity, then that would be great. Just to summarise very quickly, in case people aren't familiar, Zeitgeist Movement is a sustainability advocacy group which seeks to apply science to social concern. That's a very, very short description of it, and I'm sure there's plenty more you can do on your own to investigate that further, because this isn't the time and place for it really. So yeah, other people could be at any point on our timeline of what we're doing or ahead of it, and we'd welcome any feedback for them to chip in and add to what we've said if possible. So for me personally, what happened was, before the first Zeitgeist documentary came out, I was sitting around. I've got a great selection of friends, are very diverse and interesting, but I was feeling very dismayed generally with the sort of things people talk about, and I was focused on the big picture, really upset that Bush had been in for 2 terms. I wasn't naive enough to believe that he was really pulling strings. Obviously there was power behind him making those decisions, but still it seemed too anachronistic that he was in power. I was thinking the way I was thinking, which felt like it was a good level of consciousness, and you've got this monkey, seemingly running the world to all intents and purposes. So it was just too much. The cognitive dissonance in my head of those 2 things was too much, and it just didn't make sense. So I was getting really upset, and saw the first film. It was huge. I think it was probably the best thing I felt like I'd seen at that point. I loved the no bullshit tone of the narration, and by the end of it, I felt like yes. But there was, when it said the revolution is now, but it was still like, but what do we do? I don't want to rehash this kind of stuff too much, because this is stuff that's been talked about before. But when it came to the addendum film and the Venus Project section, it was so left field, but I was with it, and finally this whole world of what I think is a hub of the best critical thinking that's happening in the world today was born. And I think what the information in these Zeitgeist films did for me was got me over my ego, particularly the Krishnamurti stuff and his perception on what it means to be, there's, a conscious person who wants to question ego, but also live with it as well. And wrapped up into all that is also the importance of the bravery of being yourself and standing up for what you think and what matters, and all that matters to me is what makes sense, and what you think should be voiced and vocalized. If you feel passionately about it, we're living in an age that's too repressed. So it's really, in my head, it's the way things are versus the way things should be. And I was watching all this information coming out of the TV screen from these documentaries, and I thought, well, once I saw that the idea for the movement was put up as one of the suggestions for social transformation in addendum, I thought, well, logically, I should start seeing this kind of stuff manifesting around me and the people around me in time. At the time I didn't have it, but then sure enough, we got out promo material in our area, and I remember the stickers that I saw around the city said, "What is money? Zeitgeist addendum, Zeitgeist movement website, the global change we've all been waiting for." And what I think that effect had on the area is, when you have promo material out there, doing its thing, what it does is it has your area asking, what is this? So rather than you trying to go around evangelically, pushing the word onto people or trying to get people to listen to you, it's much more powerful if you get people to arouse their own curiosity, just by pushing people's buttons psychologically in the right way, by the way you present things. So I think that, gestated in the area for a few months, good few months, before the Zeitgeist Cardiff chapter was started by Martin Andel, who introduced himself earlier. He's the same person who introduced the show, a previous Zeitgeist global podcast show with Simon Andrew from Action on Education and Jim Phillips from TZM Education. And he started the chapter, and before the first meeting, I was really, really fascinated to...
It was Liam Swords as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Liam Swords was also on that radio show. I was doing it from memory. I was really interested to come to this first meeting to see what the quality of the people would be like. I was kind of maybe a bit scared that, there might be too many New World Order, Illuminati focused, obsessed types there, or...
That's right. I was really worried about that myself, because from the start we had some people there that knew what needed to be done, or knew what they were after, and some really confused people who were just about the post-religious shit and stuff that we didn't really need, the publicity that we wouldn't ever want to have connected to ours. That's what I mean.
Yeah, and so when I got there, I was just really pleased that there was a good quality of people there on the table, at least for a good base starting point. And it was still very challenging. And the first time I got there, I think it was an exercise in holding your head and managing to try to listen but also direct things in a positive direction. But it was interesting because everyone wanted to do the same thing. But it was quite strange, and I think that's something that doesn't necessarily get talked about much with an endeavour like this, that it's quite a strange thing we're doing here because it feels so different. But weirdness can be attractive, and it's not like I want to market that as such as what this is, because I don't think it is weird. I think it's quite central. But I love that Einstein quote: "If at first the idea is not absurd, then there is no hope for it." I think there's a lot of weight in that, because
I think there's another point on that, which is basically that the mainstream is so much of a sewer that it's better to live on the margins, in a sense of knowledge and of understanding of things. If you look at everything from mainstream media to a lot of predominant cultural values, they are, the glorification of violence, sexualization of virtue, anything that moves, etc. So yeah, that's what you can expect. So we all know this. So yeah, I mean, I think for myself, I came from a background of, well, I mean, a good test I think of like how far you've come as a person is to look at yourself and imagine a conversation when you were like, say, 2 to 5 years ago to the present day, and how you would perceive yourself. And if I look at myself, say, 5 years ago, I would probably be having arguments with myself quite considerably. I've come quite a long way. And I think that is just from the realisation that a lot of what we assume is bullshit. And I think as long as you've got a degree of the ability to sift chocolate ice cream from the dog shit, you can filter through all of this stuff and hopefully get to the bare bones of what is needed to be done for the benefit of all. That's what I've got to say on that.
Yeah, so that's something I keep in mind, that the way things are doesn't feel like the way that things should be, and when people try to marginalise and make things seem strange, or make what we're doing seem strange, I think that it's important to remember that these ideas are quite central. I think, like for example, I've been trying to eat a mostly raw food diet for the last 2.5 years now. There's different opinions out there as to what the best diet is or whatever. But when people challenge me on it for it seeming extreme or strange, I'm like, well, to my mind, I'm eating the food that grows from the earth. So that seems central to me. So it's just a little example of how I think today left is right, up is down, back is forward. But maybe I'm just stating the obvious. So nevertheless, there is this feeling in life that life seems normal and abnormal at the same time. On one level, it seems like we've got to pay our bills and do all the routine stuff, but the moment you start thinking with any level of depth about anything, suddenly, whether it's quantum physics or just free spiritual thinking, you start getting into a world of mystery, which I think is really the basis of reality. And every day I think about the fact we evolved from single-cell organisms. If that isn't inspiring and doesn't make the idea of cooperating globally just to take care of each other's needs seem a lot more simple, then I don't know what is. So the only reason I'm just covering that strange stuff is because I think, or the perception of it being strange is because not recognising that could lead to too evangelical an attitude. But when all thinking is done, I think what we're pushing here is sanity incarnate. So anyway, on our first meeting and the meetings that followed, what I was really impressed with was how everyone focused on the common cause together, very naturally and hungrily. And it's a mature behaviour from a group of people who are only just newly getting to know each other. And it's relieving to do things that aren't focused on just you. Once again, maybe that's kind of obvious to anybody listening or who gets the general principle of what the Zeitgeist movement's trying to do. But anyway, we set about quickly trying to organise flyers that represent what the movement's about, and also from our particular, personal collective understanding. We arranged screenings of, we were setting about arranging screenings for Zeitgeist moving forward because it was coming up. Began the process of week by week talking the ideas out because they were still quite fresh, and all the doubts that we had. It's great to be able to bounce them off other people and see what sticks, because normally what sticks is strong and true to our minds. We had to deal with people who were very challenging. Maybe like there's someone called Craig who used to be a part of the Zeitgeist movement in our area, and I raise his name because everyone's still got a good impression of him. We had a long period where he had a different opinion about the way that we should operate, and we had to do a lot of listening to him and trying to incorporate and allow for his way of thinking. And what I was impressed with was the way everyone involved dealt with it in such an emotionally intelligent way, and still to this day, even though he went his separate way, still likes him and still understands that he cares, and I've even defended him to other groups of people when we've been talking about him. So that kind of level of human behaviour is what naturally arises when I think good people get together focused on a common cause. When they're happy to put their ego to the side when needs be. And over the last few years, I've had just the best conversations of my life. I'm starting to lose count. Finally, I'm around the open, intelligent, and conscious people that I wanted to find. So what I talked about earlier, like that it should start manifesting around you, has happened, and that can only increase. And I think this all like feels like a scene from a film, but it's real. You know, what's exciting about what's happening now? I saw something on the TROM website, TROM. It's a documentary I haven't watched yet, but I think they're doing some sort of new project. But there was a little bit of blurb on the website that said that the person who wrote it prefers documentaries now to films because they're real, and that's made me realise, yeah, that's the same way that I've been feeling. But you know, it takes the excitement you feel from watching a film and seeing inspiring activity happening there, just in an artistic sense, and brings it into your own life in a much bigger way, because you feel like you're actually taking a hold of your own reality, just at least by trying to talk about the big picture. So that was really extended to when we did these moving forward screenings. I mean, I was away in London doing a lot of theatre work at the time, but when I came back to the venue when we did the second screening, I walked into the room and there was this feeling of heightened consciousness in the room that I've never felt in a club before, and it was so exciting. And it really felt like a yes moment, like we all were like hugging each other and sorry if it sounds overblown, but you know, it really felt exciting that we'd done these two screenings and injected this, you know, quality information, this quality basis of, you know, thinking critically to about, say, 200 people in the area. And I think that was really exciting because Cardiff's a, you know, a good area. It's got good interesting and interested people, so it felt like we really, you know, done a syringe shot of goodness into the area in very basic language. That's what we've created for ourselves in our area. We've seen the way we changed our area by virtue of the fact that people are aware of us, whether they think A about us or they think Z about us. You know, they're aware of it, and it adds more to people's thinking. Obviously, it can only be healthy. You know,
yeah, I mean, that's an important point. I mean, like we've done, you know, Z Days, we've done Zeitgeist Musical Festival. So on one level, we had, you know, people like Killer Keller, you know, beatboxing for us and things like that. Big up to him. But like, so what we're, you know, obviously the Zeitgeist movement is really about changing the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. You know, there's an awful lot of crazy going on in the world. You know, we all kind of understand the environmental factors that influence human behaviour and the systemic nature of it. Nonetheless, we have to touch people, I think, on various levels, be it on an intellectual level or an emotional, visceral level. I think one of the things I've learned from being in this thing was, I was big in the beginning on, like, you know, a lot of collaboration and what have you. But now I've kind of sort of focused on more of what I can do as an individual, rather than going out and flying. If that's your, you know, gig, good for you. But for me personally, I find that doing talks and things like that is you don't claim to be good at it or anything, but that's how I think my preferred modality of doing things. We haven't heard from Carlos actually. Normally he's very vocal. I think we should hear from him.
No, I'm trying to learn. That's basically what I mean. Like I can tell a little bit about my personal experience as well. To share. I was during a certain period of my life. I researched a lot of things about like how the human brain works, psychology, stuff like this. But I'm always trying to make sense. I always try to make sense out of things. And for someone that obviously is just a product of the environment, but an environment that it's not, it's a mainstream environment, always with a lot of TV influences and things like that. It gets really hard to make sense of things because there are a lot of dogmas involved in everything we do, and if no one ever suggests that we should start questioning some dogmas, it's really hard for someone to just question it by itself, by himself. So basically, what happened in my life was that I was trying really hard to make a sense of the economic models and the way the economy works. And one day I saw a link on some friend's Facebook page. I clicked. It was Zeitgeist moving forward. And suddenly I realized that after all my efforts, I did a master's in business. After that, I researched a little bit on the complex theories of economics. I was trying really hard to make sense out of all of this. And suddenly, someone just came up, and you ever questioned the existence of money itself? And for me, like, it was very symptomatic that
It's very nice.
and I thought I was, like a smart person. I thought I was learning, but that means very little when you are actually not able to question everything. So for me, critical thinking is about like lowering our emotional barriers to learning, and questioning money makes everything so much easier. I mean, it doesn't mean necessarily that's the right answer, but the fact that I couldn't question it before and I can question it now opens so many possibilities, and like I can share a little bit more about the methodologies and the ways I use for thinking and to looking at the complexity of things now. But that's my main point now, is that now I can really question, and that opens a world of possibilities.
Yeah, so that's some good elaboration. Hang on one second, I'm redoing things with this mic. Not what you think. Okay, so what can you do? Well, what we've done, which seems natural to me, is we've tried to go to other people's meetings. Whenever there's an event going on from people who are getting together for some sort of social reason. We've been there in different shapes and forms.
For that, we have been accused of being a cult, apart from other things. There was one quite fruitful debate with one local group that was basically made of groups. It was, or it is, called a Cardiff Hub, which I have a massive respect for, but we weren't initially, even though we were invited there, we weren't initially being welcomed as warmly as I would expect. It was more like, oh, them cultists again, and it was a struggle. It was some really long and frightful Facebook debates and other debates, and yeah, I think in the end we have made our point, because we remain strong on what we think is right, and we're not religious about it. We're trying to be proven wrong, but there weren't many people who would actually engage in.
But I think that's how you approach it.
In trying to explain what we're wrong in.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at that, I mean, I didn't really participate much in, trying to bridge with other groups in particular. But I think one of the problems is not to seem to be proselytizing, and sometimes you can appear to be that way even if you're not. I think Jacques Fresco pointed out quite accurately that a way to get in with people is to essentially agree with them most of the time, and then then basically start to flip it back on them, basically their own logic, whatever. I mean, there's other whole treatises on what you can say about persuading people and getting people ways of communication. There's some really good stuff. I've forgotten by who it is. One of the women in the LAZ Day did a thing on communication, which was excellent.
Jim Wilding.
That's it. Yeah, she was really good. I learned a lot from that. I have to say as well, while I'm just on a tangent, Oscar Gonzalez's transition to an RDE I found very fascinating. I've got a background in biochemistry. I liked his cancer analogy of how RBE metastasizes through this monetary-based economy and that kind of thing. I mean, that goes on to a whole other topic, but you know, I'm just really excited. Really, it's how there are people globally connecting and really trying to reach out, thinking along similar lines, and I think we're influencing people in such a short space of time. I think we've influenced an awful lot of people, and you know, ultimately, every conversation you're going to have with somebody isn't going to ultimately change their mind. But what I prefer to adopt is a sort of what's called a high velocity, low drag approach, where you're planting seeds of cognitive dissonance into people's minds with a view to sort of psychologically inoculating them, so that, you know, if you're challenging their assumptions about money or immigration or any particular social issue, you can essentially prepare them better for the future should events not go well. And I think that's why I'm partly in the movement, really, is because I think for any of us who are aware of the challenges facing humanity, I think if you're a person of goodwill, you know, you've got to get active about these things.
For me, what was a really big realization was that I've met so many different groups and individuals here in Cardiff who had these brilliant ideas, and I agreed with most of them because they were new and they made sense. There was a lot of people I've met, but somehow on our side, or on what we were trying to do, was to assimilate all these and to make people aware that there is a life ground, as John McMurtry says. There is a life ground on what the basics we need and how to get them. We sort of have to forget about our little petty differences, and we need to concentrate on what we need to have done. And it's there are these many groups in Cardiff, and all of them are trying to do their little thing. Some of them also with a little bit of commercial sort of interest, but they don't seem to be able to harmonize with each other. And I think that's the main role of the Zeitgeist movement, in my mind, is to try to bridge the differences between all these little groups, and because eventually that's what stands against the interest of those who run the show now. Is they fear that these all little groups could actually find something that they want together, and or I'd say my aim, at least, is to find the same language with all the little groups that basically share the same goal, but they have different way of approaching it, and we need to make sure that in the end we will all be together and make things right.
Yeah, on that note, I really enjoyed the documentary Owned and Operated. Really recommend that highly on YouTube. I love the way it strengthens the overlap between Zeitgeist, Occupy, Anonymous, Venus Projects, if you like, and yeah, please go and watch that. In reference to what Martin was mentioning about the cult thing, what I liked about that whole accusation, you know, is whether it's happened on the internet at the beginning when the movement first came out, or whether people around here were saying it as a knee-jerk kind of trigger thing, is how on this side of the fence I've never even heard anyone like put any energy into dispelling that, because it's inconsequential. Like, you know, no one ever really thinks that maybe like the first time I saw the words on a screen, let's create the biggest movement the world's ever seen, blah 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 blah, like it was my first thought, like, would that be a cult? Well, no, because a group is just a group is good or bad depending upon how you cast it, and actually it's the opposite of that, because we want this to end. You know, as these ideas become real, there'll be no need for a Zeitgeist movement. etc., etc. So anyway, so yeah, we linked with the CF Hub group, which is a hub of environmental groups in the area. Really good idea, really appreciate it being created. Also, Occupy Cardiff.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean,
They weren't so excited about seeing us. Some of them were open to discussion, but
downright hostile.
yeah,
But
it's this whole thing of calling you a communist, calling you a capitalist, calling you ist of that kind or that kind, but it's as I said before, it's the finding of the light ground, finding of some goals we share together. It's as Jack Fresco, as Peter Joseph says, it's the food, water, shelter, the basic well-being we all need to have together, and the current way of conduct is what humankind holds. It's not sustainable. It's not going to provide for all of us, and I think everyone, the Occupy movement, the Anonymous, they pretty much realize that there has to be something done, but they should sort of extend their perception to even more extreme measures than just some sort of reform of finance that has proven to be ineffective in times of this superb technical revolution which we have now. I mean, we should really try to look everywhere for the solution, not just some fragments of what we've got.
But, you know, to expand on that, I mean, look, the Occupy movements and all this, sort of movements are a good thing, because look, you know, if you understand one thing about society, if you look at the work of Dr. Joseph Tainter and what have you, is that you have this, you know, we understand that it's an emergent, complex system. The socio-economic activity is a function of that system, and like all systems, they build up, they get more expansive as they try to preserve themselves, and more resources go into their self-preservation, and eventually they collapse, and therefore the civilization or society, whatever you want to call it, collapses into something new. You know, transition is the default state of the universe. There's no point getting hung up on what is coming up. However, you know, I did a talk on deflation. I think that basically we've run out of time to avoid deflation now. You know, I don't think there's anything in the world that's going to prevent that. The massive contraction of money supply is going to have severe consequences, but also opportunities. And I think this is an extremely important role that I think the Zeitgeist movement should try to exploit, in the sense that as things break down, we should be the glue that binds everybody else together, and fix and at least give a cohesive direction to where we want to go with things. You know, although we're apolitical in nature, in our views, you know, using the common parlance of today, you've got to be politically active in a sense of like offering solutions or counter ideas, counter memes or whatever to the, you know, highly self-interested and propaganda that is filling most people's minds at the moment. It's really come across to me in the last few years now how much of the mainstream media is pure fiction. How much of our history is pure fiction as well, and we really know nothing about, you know, a lot of people talk about the Federal Reserve and what have you. These are small fragments of the history we don't really know. After all, history is written by the winners, and the first casualty of war is the truth. So we really know nothing, and I think it's trying to educate your fellow countryman or brother or sister family to some of these ideas, Something that I found out fairly recently, and I think as an example, you may disagree or agree with me, but is the, we live in Britain here, and every 5th of November, for those of you who don't know, we have Guy Fawkes Day. And Guy Fawkes Day is part of the national ideology. I remember as a child building really good bonfires, actually, with my friends in my neighbourhood. Building massive bonfires. And yet, if you actually look at the story, apparently they dug a tunnel under the Houses of Parliament, and in fact there's no tunnel. And there's builders in 1869, there was no tunnel. And also we know that it was in fact not gunpowder, but decayed corn powder. And and we know this because there are records in the inventory of the British government, plus all the double agents, what have you, who were seen leaving Lord Salisbury, who was the Prime Minister's house at that time. So, our very history in this country is a very, very, just very, I'm not wishing to conclude on this point, but, we're a 21st century civilization in terms of technology, but we're running on 18th, 19th century ideals.
So much for the UK PLC.
Yeah, and a real concern of mine is that this country is becoming an incipient fascist state. Well, it's already been fascistic for some time, but now it's really starting to become more incremental in its activation, if you wish. Ultimately, there'll have to come a point where it'll become so obvious that people will have to react. But I do think that it's important that we are there to fill in the gaps, in a sense, going back to my earlier point about these issues, because there's going to be a lot of divide and conquer going on. I mean, you already see it in this country of private versus public sector.
Oh yeah.
That's a really good one. I can't watch For Question Time anymore. Just the level of, just how retarded it is, basically. But if you understand the propaganda techniques that are used, how issues are portrayed as a divide and conquer issue, then you understand how you're being played. And if you can persuade I'm a big believer in spreading. In work, I have all sorts of crazy stuff. People don't really know how to take me. I get on with people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a crazy nutter or anything. But I do. I'm very.
We'll be the judge of that.
Yeah. I mean, I am a nutter actually. Sorry, but but what I'm trying to do is just instill a level of pricking people's bubbles. A lot of people are in bubbles, and they need to be, pricked on some level. You can't walk everybody to your level of understanding of things, and your level of understanding of things may be wrong. For all we know, I might be wrong on lots of things. So, but really to just get people intellectually moving towards a more advanced understanding of how they've been brainwashed and basically coerced into all kinds of horrible behaviours.
If I would define an objective to Zeitgeist, that I think it's the most important one is that unifying power of Zeitgeist. I agree with that. I always say that I believe that knowledge is the most unifying thing we have, and we see 4 different stories of 4 different people that got more or less to the same route from different ways and different learning processes and different backgrounds and different. So it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter where you start from. It matters that if you never stop, you're likely to find other people on your way that share the same route. And that's basically, I think, the most important thing that the Zeitgeist and critical thinking gave to me, which is basically that I don't stop now. I don't get attached to, I don't raise emotional barriers, I don't get attached to ideas, and I'm always ready to move to the next best thing. And I think that, and that's, I think, what we need to spread, because once everyone does that, once everyone just let go of all those dogmas, then we will all, sooner or later, reach a common ground. You know, it might not be exactly the same. It's even better if it's not exactly the same, because we need variety as a species. We need different people trying different stuff. But what we need is for them not to stop, not to get attached to what they've tried and say, I'm not willing to try anything else. You know, most people we come across just they stopped when they were 9. You know, they learned until they were 9, whatever there was, like someone told them, and then that's it. Game over. From there on, they're grown-ups believing the same thing that they believed when they were 9 years old.
What
their
parents
yeah,
told them.
whatever someone told them. You know, like, and that's for me is really sad. And I think that, and on that perspective, I would like to, I don't know if like it's the time for that, but I would like to elaborate a little bit on how I actually bridge with people, and this touches on that cult like argument and all the other like the artificial divisions, as I call it, that basically I use to divide the slaves into never questioning the master, because you know, like if we actually realize that whatever we think is right, wrong, real, whatever you want to call it, depends on our like brain's work and our conditioning, right? Then we can understand that the same trigger, the same outside factor, can generate different realities in different brains, right? So once we really understand that, then it means that I don't have to make everyone agree with me. All I need, first and foremost, all I need is to understand the way they are looking at things and the way they understand it. You know, I don't have to. You know, like if a colorblind sees a different color than me, and this is part of my process of critical thinking. I'm feeling less and less need of actually establishing who is right, if it's me or him. It doesn't matter as long as I understand why he sees a different color than me, and I understand the way his brain works. It doesn't matter who is wrong or right, because you know, like, so I'm not really judging. So when I bridge with people from CFM, as long as they explain to me why they think that way, I'm fine with it. The only problem I find is that when I keep asking why and why and why, because sooner or later they run into some kind of dogma, they start getting upset. Because there's no more whys, because it's just because. And that's the problem I have with... this touches the cult argument, because when you say, and it's cult, human nature, all these kind of arguments that they basically are symptoms to express a lack of need to actually learn and understand. So people say, oh, your beliefs or your ideas are so outside the norm, so outside of what I'm used to, that you probably being brainwashed by a cult, right? What does that mean? It means that I'm trying to come up with an excuse, a mind trick, to trick my brain and not to try to understand you. It's all it is. So you're a cult, I don't have to try to understand you.
One typical behaviour found in cults is that they really question the, be it the dogmas or the tenets of their belief system.
Yeah, but that's...
whereas we're doing the exact opposite. So when you throw that back there in their faces, they tend to exhibit a lot of cognitive dissonance and get quite abusive. But that's obviously one of the best ways to do it. But
yeah, I question Zeitgeist ideas all the time. But the thing is, I didn't manage to find anything better.
Well, it's I mean, like the argument.
It's not Zeitgeist ideas, anyway. It's about the promotion of the scientific method, as Dan put it in brief terms, for social concern. However, obviously, it's more than that. It's about, as plenty of people within the movement have elaborated, it's about a train of thought, and that's basically it. And I'm a big fan of Karl Popper. I read the Logic of Scientific Discovery, and not an easy read. It's no Harry Potter, I'll give you that. But if you understand the concept of falsifiability and things like that, in terms of filtering the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, that's a very powerful tool. I recommend that book. But again, I'm meandering. you know, I think, you know, I question things within the movement, things like the ability for humans to actually have a steady state economy. If that is one of the things we are thinking of going towards, but again, that's a technical issue. I mean, my motivations at the moment really are more on an anti-war tilt, because what we're seeing now is a restructuring of the American empire. Personally, I've taken a massive interest into geopolitical issues, plus many other issues, as we all do. However, I do feel that you know, a lot of what we're seeing in the Middle East, yes, the people in those countries have you know, legitimate social concerns and issues to protest about. Nonetheless, I think there is active participation by NATO, particularly Britain, America, France, and Israel, in destabilising the Middle East. Also, the issues with the euro. You know, yeah, we can talk about the mathematical stupidity of modern monetary mechanics. Nevertheless, there is a concerted effort by Wall Street and the City of London to destroy the euro. This is 2/3 of this country's trade is done with the European Union. This is just economic suicide, but in these guys' heads, it's basically beggar my neighbour, last man standing. And this is going, I mentioned this earlier about deflation. I think this is something...
Do they want to become an oligarch?
Sorry?
Do they want to become oligarchs?
Who?
The people who try to destabilize Europe.
Oh, well, this is just the Anglo-American, I would say an Anglo-American...
You say the last man standing, does that mean...
I don't believe in the New World Order, not the stuff. I just think it's mainly the one that we live in Britain. So the guys that we're talking about really is, you know, Wall Street, City of London, the nexus of that and the intelligence agencies, and obviously other monarchies, things like that. You know, but nonetheless, I mean, big corporations. You know, it's fairly obvious when you think about it. This is like some, you know, it's not like a very small group of people. Relatively speaking, it is, but nonetheless, I don't focus too much on them, because if you understand that, again, this goes back to the emergent nature of the universe, and that, you know, despite their best laid plans, it's going to fail, because nothing humans do is ever going to truly
Last?
Yeah.
It's not supposed to last, is it?
No. This is the thing. Things break down, and new structures emerge, new forms, and I think that's an inherent part of this universe. You know, it's driven by chaos and laws of complexity, entropy, what have you. These are the laws that underpin evolution. Evolution doesn't have a direction, by the way. You know, there's this. I see a lot of ideas out there saying, you know, technology is on a, you know, constant course upwards. But then again, you could argue that, but then again, it could go down as well. You know, this universe is infinitely variable to, you know, within its hardwired laws. I think, you know, to fret about too much of these things is quite bad. But I think at the moment, I think we're on the tipping point in Britain. I think the next 10-15 years of Britain is going to be very, very interesting. I think it's a lot of opportunities for this movement. Like I said before, and I'll keep repeating it, to fill in the gaps between all the other movements, to be the glue, to get people, agreeing to our ideas, that understand that we have to move on to something else. But ultimately, there's also a lot of little fights, I think, that we need to start engaging. But
a lot of what?
Little fights, so to speak, you know, little battles to win as well, I think, in people's minds. Because ultimately, it's a battle for people's minds. And this is why I'm going on an anti-war tilt, because, you know, a lot of our human brothers and sisters are getting slaughtered through various means. I mean, there's definitely a ramping up now of war against Syria, war against Iran. This could lead to very, very cascading something very, very bad, very, very fast.
Which are the most expensively looking adverts in the telly? Guess? Join the army.
Yeah.
Yeah, be a trooper. Be a trooper, be a driver, be a mechanic, be a medic. Army will pay for all your education, and you will become a trooper from nothing, from a child, from whoever,
Yeah, but it's
from
not.
whatever area they collect you. They pay you some 13 grand a year, which is still below average really for being sent to Afghanistan, but still those adverts are looking quite cool actually. It's a bit like Rambo, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad thing about the military-industrial complex and what have you. It makes victims of everyone, including the soldiers and what have you. I'm not anti, and I don't think anybody here is anti people in the army. I just want like this insane. It's only good, you know. Ultimately, we have to bridge with everyone, and that's why this goes back to being the glue between all the groups there. I think that's what we have to show is an ability to communicate with the broadest range of people possible.
Yeah, if I, even touching on that argument, I would say that it's very important to look at things, lower emotional barriers to learning, right? So how, I can share my attempt to accomplish this, and it goes more or less along the lines of not only realizing that it's possible everyone have their own opinion and still be able to cooperate, which is fine, but also realize that not judging. How can you not judge? For example, Vivak was telling about, they're killing children, and any person with empathy has to judge it and say that's a bad thing. But that doesn't pass too much information. And that's the problem. Is that what I'm trying to say is that if I don't agree with someone, right, and if I say that in my opinion that is wrong, I'm not really transmitting any information. That doesn't mean anything, So the first stage I want is to understand how their brain work, what their rationalizations are, so I can understand exactly why they think the way they think. So I never rest behind the excuse like, oh, they're crazy, they're a cult, they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing, because those kinds of arguments are like learning killers. So I don't go there. I try to understand as much as I can about the way they rationalize things. And once, I'm talking about obviously different views. Once I understand that, then I'm happy. They have different views, I understand it, I understand exactly why. And unless we come up with an objective, then we can't say it's wrong or right.
Yeah.
So,
because an objective,
so for me it's enough. Yeah,
to apply criticism implies a direction, in a sense.
Exactly.
What's the point of arguing about what flavour crisps you prefer? Because that, unless your life depends on eating crisps for the rest of your life.
Or crisps.
Yeah, you see my point.
Important.
Yeah, but you understand.
Forgive me.
You understand where I'm coming from, right? Once you understand how other people rationalize things, their points of view, you don't need this need that I was taught to feel that I have to make other people's views compatible to mine, otherwise there's an emotional loss.
Yeah.
That's
Weird
what I'm
one,
trying
isn't
to let go.
Yeah.
So I don't care if their views are different, that's fine, as long as I understand that I did my role in learning. If they understand mine, that's fine as well. Now, once we define an objective, now we need to see which one of the views is going to accomplish that objective better. It's as simple as that. So my objective, my fundamental objective is survive as a species. That's my fundamental objective. And this objective, it's not mine because I created it. This objective is mine because it was evolved in my species. Maybe there were some species that didn't want to survive, but those species are not living now. What I see is that even the will to survive was evolved You know, so I understand everything in the context of adapting to the planet. The environment is king, and everything happened like evolving towards adaptation to the planet. Now, if a certain species, if a certain living thing doesn't want to live, then it's not alive anymore. It is not. So the fact that I want to survive as a species was evolved as well,
Yeah,
due
but,
to the
but
characteristics of the planet. Now let me
Yeah,
let me
go
just
on.
finish this point. Once that is my fundamental goal, is to survive, right? Then I can look at killing children in foreign countries and see if that's a good method of the survival of the species. And I can look at all the range of aberrant behavior without judging it, right? I'm not judging. I'm not saying he's wrong or right. What I'm saying is, will this accomplish the objective of survival of the species better or not? And all the aberrant behavior, the way I define it, is everything that if everyone will do it, will put in risk the own survival of our species.
Yeah.
So if everyone will start killing each other's children, children, that will unavoidably put the species, the entire species, in risk. It's like Gandhi used to say, an eye for an eye makes the entire world blind.
Yeah.
And that's this kind of feeding the right cycles. It doesn't matter if I see it or not. It doesn't matter if my limited brain
Yeah.
sees the consequences of what I'm doing or not. I know that once I antagonize someone, that someone is going to antagonize someone else, and the cycle of violence, right?
Just keeps repeating.
It's going to sooner or later affect me.
And that's one thing as well, because like in work I hear people like, I used to do this myself, so like, I'm not saying I'm superior or anything of the sort, but people like, nice people as well, glorifying the achievements of the SAS or the Iranian embassy siege and what have you. And I'm there, and now I just prick their bubble as fast as possible in conversation. Not in a confrontational way, but in a way to instill, I challenge them. I say, if like Jack Fresco's goes again says like, if I go kill 50 children in a school, I'm somehow an evil murderer and nutter. Or if I go and fly a plane and drop a bomb on a school, killing 50 children by accident due to bad intelligence, even though it's a smart bomb, then I get a medal on my chest. So, and when you throw that at people, they can't, unless they're just being, very cynical.
Well, but there's loads of those examples.
Yeah. But again, I think it's just when you're talking about fairly, the way that people construct ideologies due to the information that they're given, and the information we're given is very poor, I'm sorry to say. You're obviously going to end up with a lot of this crazy stuff. A lot of the, it's ultimately what has got us here is the culmination of hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, of dominant group thinking. Like Gabor Mate said, it's the dominant culture of any society is that of the dominant group. And this is also a good one against the conspiracy elements that's levelled against the group. Ask people to define what conspiracy means, and also to ask them about the negative connotations of the word conspiracy theorist. If you challenge people who are doing corrupt behaviour, particularly people in positions of power, somehow you're a conspiracy theorist. However, if you accuse someone on Twitter of a footballer doing it, that's headline news. So I mean, I don't know what to say really.
And I'd really like just to point out that the flavor of crisps is actually what matters in for a very large number of people in the UK. It's kind of a undereducated, or maybe just media fed or government information fed status now, that when people just don't care about what's going to happen in the future. We used to have this saying in our country, in Czech Republic, that after us there will be flood, meaning that we live for the moment, the carpe diem, the old Roman saying, to cheer the day for you, and you live for the day. Hedonistically, you enjoy yourselves for the short moment, and you don't care about your future. And that's the main storyline for everything we live in now. I don't know if there's much more to offer, basically, from the current socio-economic system.
Hang on. What does so after us there will be flood? What does that bit mean?
As I said, it
doesn't
means
matter.
after us there will be nothing.
Yeah, just live the day. But the thing is that the most amazing thing for me is that not only the flavor of crisps is the most important thing, but also there's a wrong and a right one. And even better, if I like cheese and you don't, you're crazy. You're probably a cult member, you know. And that's the wonderful thing about like the way we are raised, because we need to understand that traditionally it's very important to have the majority of the people very divided, right? So we learn all these little techniques of being divided. One of them is to actually don't understand that people can have different interpretations of the same thing, because that thing, it's not outside ourselves. It's a combination between ourselves and whatever the external trigger is. So there's absolutely no difference between supporting one club or supporting the other, because the trigger is different, but what happens in your brain is the same.
Yeah.
So if you support Liverpool and I support Manchester United,
It's fair,
our
it's been mentioned before, then.
our brain is acting exactly the same way. So there's no difference between those two acts of supporting. And once we are convinced by TV that it's totally different, that like the supporters of one group somehow are better than the others, when we keep when we have, when I say TV, I'm saying in general the media and the education system and all this bubble wrap, you know. But the thing is that once we are convinced that it's actually that there's little boxes like communism, capitalism, left, right, one club versus another, different religions. So we have little boxes, and then we have the freedom, the illusion of freedom of choosing one of those boxes.
Yeah.
But we never have the illusion of freedom of actually questioning
This actually gets me
who
on to-
defines the boxes.
It's a good point. I think that's a good stepping stone to something a bit more intellectual in the sense of like language. For those of you who might be familiar with Alfred Korzybski, there's also a form of English called E prime. And I'm very interested in the fact that English is quite retarded in the sense that it has the word is. And
Well, most languages are.
yeah,
I know
well,
a
the
couple of
concept, the
more-
concept of to be, I should specify really, and you know, as Shakespeare wrote, to be or not to be. But this as an idea is very limiting in our way we conceptualize the universe. Again, this goes back to, you know, in Orwell he talks about Newspeak in 1984. You know, limiting the language down to a very limited range of words, so that people don't have the vocabulary to express their ideas. I think English certainly suffers from some structural understandings of that. I think Robert Anton Wilson is an interesting guy to read on that sort of stuff.
Well, have you been to the court? Go on.
Yeah, yeah.
Recently.
I know, yeah. And you know, and I think it's really, you know, I think as a movement, it's challenging and slaying all these sacred cows, these assumptions we've made that have just proven to be utter bullshit. And you know, and the sooner we get that and win that battle of ideas, the battle of, I hate to use the word battle actually because it just implies, you know, violence, but like ultimately, you know, to change the zeitgeist, to change people in their minds, in their hearts, or whatever you want to call it. That's the only way really we're going to, you know, get through this. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. But you know, my advice to anybody who's like in the movement, maybe in an area where there isn't much in the way of support and all that, is like basically do your own thing, you know. You know, as long as you're not like, you know, being violent and crazy and all that. But like, you know, as long as you're like trying to meet with people, even if, but you don't have to. If your thing is like going and talking to people in the street, do it. If your thing is actually doing videos on the internet, do it. If your thing is, you know, musically doing something, do it. You know, the only way you're going to touch people is through the triggers that are appeal most to them. So I wouldn't be very good musically, you know, trying to reach people, whereas Dan would be, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, ultimately, just do what you can do, and from there, hopefully something better will emerge. And this is the other thing about complex civilizations and laws of complexity, I think, is that if you can, just by doing it, you're generating enough complexity to break down the old orders and the old forms and the old social structures. And
that's interesting.
You know, again, everything is emergent. So don't get, you know, yeah, of course, what can you do, and, you know, be the change you want to be and all that good stuff. But there are so many factors that we don't fully understand yet that could, you know, swing things in our way.
A metaphor I got for the point you were making about Orwell and the limited vocabulary.
Newspeak, yeah?
Yeah, Newspeak. I had a dream a little while ago. I won't go into the whole thing, but I was on the moon. I spent a lot of time on the moon.
Okay.
And in it, people were walking a bit strange. They were sort of stumbling every now and then. Signs that I was reading on the moon, yeah, had little words missing, like the and or to, you know, little things like this, and it made it really creepy. And it was kind of like something similar to the feeling you get when you watch Idiocracy. You've seen that film? Yeah, just a kind of another way of looking at the way things could be if we don't uphold intelligence and goodness. But, you know, I think there's enough of that in the world to persevere. I want to come all the way back to Martin's point when he talks about ists, as in people who title themselves something with an ist on the end. Because when I talked about, you know, dealing with the CF Hub group in Cardiff, we're giving him a lot of publicity, you know, as though we're against them. We're not. We, you know, it's a really good thing, and Occupy and whatnot. But what I've learned in the last few years is that, you know, you do want to go to these groups where other people have similar interests to you, but don't be downhearted if you find that the people who seem like they're most into it are the hardest ones to talk to.
Yeah, they're generally the most ideologically fixed. Sorry to interrupt. You know, I think that's one thing I went to 2 or 3 meetings, and I have to say I came across some really nice people there, but I also came across when they didn't really. This is one of the interesting things actually. In our Zeitgeist meetings with the people we get very good conversations. We had a meeting with some new people who came. Was it last Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah, last Sunday, and it went on for 5 hours. So you know what those 5 hours for you? It was literally felt like about an hour and a half or something for me anyway.
Yeah.
I had such good conversations with a variety of people. It flowed naturally. It didn't have to be any silly rules like sticking your hand up and, you know, all that sort of stuff. It just happened. And this is with new people. And, you know, we know the guy with Tourette's, who was fantastic. He felt comfortable in that. And a fair play to him. He said to me early on, look, when I get nervous, his name's Gavin, by the way. Hi, Gavin, in case you listen to this. You know, he said to me, you know, I get this certain tick if I get nervous and what have you. And I said, that's cool, you know, what have you. And throughout the rest of the night, I didn't observe him having this tick. And, you know, and that really gave me hope in a sense, because it's that level of connection with other people and bridging, you know, people I wouldn't probably normally have hung around with 5 years ago or something. So this just shows that things are changing. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff about there about collapse and what have you. All it is that it's just things are going to change. Yeah, life's going to get tough. Life's going to be tough with less money, but that's also an opportunity, because ultimately, if you can operate with others sans money, without money, then that you're demonstrating immediately what a resource-based economy could possibly look like, given the technological and resource resource means available to them. So, available to you. So, we're all headed for a resource-based economy. Don't worry about that aspect so much. I think the most important thing now, as well as explaining what the movement's about, the sustainability advocacy part, is really about developing mechanisms that will work in the short and medium term to enable us to transition to something far more sustainable and, what everybody in the movement pretty much knows we can do.
Yeah, it's also find ways of dealing with the complexity, because obviously we live in a like information era, but also like a lot of propaganda going on.
Oh yeah,
and when you are watching TV and then people say, oh, Gaddafi was the best, oh, Gaddafi was like the worst, and then how do you actually make all this nonsense like make sense? And for me, what I tend to do is that I don't look only at the information. I look at the motivations people have to, say things. So obviously, and this is a learning process. So if people were raised by a family of Gaddafi supporters, they're going to have a certain view. If people are being paid in media to favor certain oil-driven interests, then they'll have a different view. But that's what we need to understand. It's why, not so much what people say. What people say is a little bit irrelevant compared to the motivations they have to say it. And on a different note, but it's more or less the same meaning. It doesn't matter what people believe or what they say they believe. It matters what people do. So if people say something like, I didn't cause the war, I'm just profiting with it, then it doesn't matter if they cause it or not, It matters what they're doing, because, full of people that believe the most altruistic things and in practice do the most terrible things is the world full. And the reason that happens, it's because they really don't understand, they just believe it. You see, and for me, believing things is the opposite of understanding it. So if you understand things, you have no need to believe in things, because there's a certain logic. So you don't have to fill the gaps of knowledge with belief. And I'm a lot more happy personally to recognize I don't know something than to use some kind of belief to address the things I don't know.
Well, yeah, I like the statement that belief is the death of intelligence. Let me just kind of round up this point I was starting on before, though.
Sorry.
No, it's cool.
Not your fault, is it? Fault, blame, guilt.
Fault, blame, guilt. That's the subtitle of the Zeitgeist movement. So yeah, I'm talking about environmentalists, socialists, anarchists. Of course, everyone's got the right to define themselves if they want. But I'm just saying, don't be surprised if you engage with people and you find those sort of people hardest to get through to. But still, all these groups are good platforms, very good platforms. I respect people for creating these opportunities for people to come together. And there's maybe more peripheral people who are great to talk to, who are less fixated on their dogmas, and they're the people that I would recommend sticking to. Basically, find good people and stick with them. That's what works. And plus, there are environmentalists, socialists, and anarchists who are in this movement as well. And especially when some people see it as a version of world socialism or anarcho-communism. We don't care for titles. The sort of people who come in and are open-minded don't care for titles either. So I really love this overlap that's happening. It's just applying the social method for social concern. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, sorry, man. We're trying to open source basically a revolution, and
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing, isn't
I call it an evolution,
but if we want to change things, we're going to have to do it ourselves. We've got to open source it. Otherwise, it'll be co-opted in some way. And it's interesting as well to see the attempts, in particular in the US and in Britain, of co-opting the Occupy movement. But I think, to be honest, the Occupy movement is divergent enough now to survive any of that sort of stuff. But for those of you who aren't, I mean, I take quite an interesting view about things. I think you can see now on the internet there are various attempts at, basically cognitively infiltrating people's mindsets on the internet. I think there's a lot of propaganda techniques out there. I think WikiLeaks is one of them. I'm not going to go into why I think that. You do your own research. You can agree or disagree. But nonetheless, I still think there's enough complexity within it to override any attempt to do it. But this is the thing. As I've been hinting throughout what I've been saying, it doesn't. I think a lot of this stuff is destined to fail anyway. It's going to break down, but do we want to end up ultimately getting as many people as possible through this, or do we want to ultimately end up with 3 chickens and a man left on the planet,
or something? Sorry for those chickens.
Yeah, or something in between, So ultimately,
3 chickens, a man, and Monica Bellucci.
That would be a woman and a man. Yeah. So
the important thing is Monica Bellucci.
Okay, all right.
True, I agree.
Well, I beg to differ, but
I'm leaving this room.
Yeah, but leading on to another point before we went slightly surreal there was that really, we really do need to. And I think there's loads of people in the movement who just give me what I've seen in this movement in the last 2-3 years. By the way, I'm not the kind of person who generally goes with movements and all that. I very much do my own thing.
I don't think any of us are. Like Mike, one of our other friends, says this is a place where all the non-conformists conform. It's quite interesting. Go on.
Yeah, perhaps, but I that term of conformity as well, I have issues with. But nevertheless,
I'm being loose.
Well, converge or
yeah. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Is that point of convergence, isn't it? You're from Portugal, you're from the Czech Republic, you're from London, I'm from Swansea via Uganda and India. So and yet we're all here sitting in a room, and these are some of the soundest people I know in this circumference. I think, going back to the larger point, I think it's important that to understand that we have to ameliorate as many effects as possible, whether in the Zeitgeist movement or not. Otherwise, I think it'd be very hard to do something about it further down the line, basically. And I think, hopefully, I try to remain optimistic. I mean, people are talking about, obviously you've seen this extra war going on with the American empire declining, trying to restructure itself. But obviously now you're starting to see the BRIC nations, they've got military pacts, they now do trade in their own currencies. China is now announced that they're going to build by 2014, 2015, a 300km/h train track from Turkey all the way to China. So basically there's a whole economic space there. We all know that that will also fail ultimately because of resource depletion and what have you. Nevertheless, what I'm trying to say is that given this current awful paradigm that we're in, where power rules, this counterbalance is starting to emerge. The unipolar worlds of the United States, that's what the New World Order actually meant, was this, it wasn't about putting chips in you so much or what have you, that's just like salad dressing. The real thing was having an Anglo-American domination of the world. That's never going to happen. And the sooner that the people who live in this part of the world, I would say that the 10% below the top, 0.1% of the world's population, we are the people who can change this the fastest. It doesn't matter whether you're Portuguese or Czech or British or American or what have you. We are the people who can save the so-called third, fourth world, our brothers and sisters down there, faster. And the only way we can do that is by changing things in our own backyard first, I think, demographically speaking. If we're going to look at the world as a whole, then we, the top 10%, the second 10%, if you want to use a meme or whatever the hell it is. They are the people who we are the people. We are, in a sense, being complicit. The reason we have a third world is because we have a first world. Yeah, we are complicit in this, and we have to change it too. And there's no point giving money to charity in one sense, because ultimately you're just feeding another system. All you got to do is like stop the wars, stop the resource depletion, and like these are the things we have to start fighting some issues pretty quickly, because I think the inevitable consequences will be terrible.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I would pick in that point of the isms, and when people start labeling themselves the same thing, isn't it? It's they're creating an emotional attachment to something that it's not really. And all as Vivek was saying, we live in a dynamic environment, so every static thing is doomed.
Yeah.
So it's either going to adapt or it's going to like not exist, and there's nothing more fixed than an ideology, isn't it? And that's I think Zeitgeist is probably a counter ideology, but what I tend to find is that and that comes to that cult thing again. I mean, want to go too much into it, but
cult.
Exactly, that cult thing. Usually, I find that the people that use that expression is because they understand it. And the way they understand it is because they themselves have an ideology. And so it's like one of the best definitions I've heard so far for empathy is that you don't see people the way they are, you see people the way you are. Yeah. And if they have already that ideology, then they assume you have one as well.
Yeah, it's projection.
Yeah, they're projecting. But if your ideology is so outside the box that they can't understand it, then it becomes a cult, and that's pretty much like. But in the end, the only reason they can't understand my ideology is because it's not an ideology. It's questioning everything, and that's not an ideology. That's the opposite of ideology. So
it's difficult if you're used to ideologies.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like if you live in a world where everything is yellow, and then some place there's a different color, and you don't even know that's a color. You don't even know what that is, and that's pretty much what I think that's because what I usually say is that what I usually observe is that they don't like people that say that there's some kind of mysticism in actually thinking that people could live happy if we just maximize human sustainability and human need satisfaction, regardless of all made up like things. So if people think that this is too mystical, then usually it's because they don't want to share my sources of information. They even block emotionally whatever I'm telling them, so they can keep the this guy is crazy kind of mentality. Because with information, if they didn't have those emotional blockages, they would be able to understand that there's a reasoning, and that they could agree or not with that reasoning. But if they emotionally block, if they sabotage their own brain into understanding what I'm saying, they will never understand it. And this is important because they like the idea of thinking that the other person is crazy, because they like the idea they don't have to try to understand it. And that's a little bit like mental laziness as well.
I heard it somewhere. I can't remember who said it. I heard it somewhere, but I can't remember who said it. But it was like somebody mocking someone. They said, "Oh, you're different. That's funny because you're different." And the person replied, "Yeah, it's funny that you're all the same."
Yeah, it's a...
Yeah. But I know that's a kind of a silly way of putting it, but I think it concatenates what you're saying quite well. Is that,
what does concatenate mean?
To basically
Put
shrink
together.
something into a smaller form that's still understandable.
Concatenate a string, right? Well, but the thing is that you'll just to finish the point, is that once you realize that any ideology is by default going to be obsolete, anything that doesn't adapt is going to be sooner or later with the growing of knowledge, which will never stop, it's going to be sooner or later become obsolete, then there's no real need to be emotionally attached to these ideas, because all ideas are destined to change with knowledge. And once, I think that this is the biggest realization that I got, and that's actually for me what critical thinking and in the form of Zeitgeist, what it can bring to society. It's a different way of looking at things. You know, it's not so much changing the things itself, it's changing the perspective, because everything we need, it's already here. The only thing missing is the perspective, how we look at things.
Changing human values.
Yeah, looking at our needs from a needs perspective and not from a market perspective. Looking at resources from need satisfaction perspective and not from a monetary gains perspective. So it's all about changing the perspective, because everything, like the outside reality, can be the same. If we look at it from a different way, we'll act differently, and that will change everything, in my opinion. It has the potential to do.
I'm going to make this point about democracy. It's totally separate from what we've been saying. I think it was coming off something that I was saying earlier. I can't remember how, but it's just a good point I want to make. You know, that I've had when dealing with people who disagree with the line of thought that we're talking about, and that is that, you know, there's one person who was saying to us that you know, we're not democratic, and I think what we're proposing is a true realistic democracy. They're talking about, you know, the kind of mob rule version of democracy, where, you know, you could have 49 people against 51 people in a group of 100 people, and, you know, the largest group want to do something racist to the smaller group, and they win because they're, you know, one in the lead, two in the lead actually. And you know, versus the Zeitgeist kind of frame of mind, which is, you know, once again, I'm happy to get rid of the word Zeitgeist. It's just a shortcut to what I'm talking about. It's a gateway word to a lot of thinking, which is that, you know, what you do is you try to employ the scientific method to make decisions. So you're using physical reality as a basis for what you decide to do. Now, you know, that would mean that people who are most qualified in their respective fields do their job, you know, without the barrier of money getting in the way, because obviously, you know, no problem can be solved in today's system unless a profit can be made making it, really. Did I do that sentence right? I think so.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? The problem is that people have this. They are trained to get emotionally attached to the way they want to do things, regardless of how that way is based, and that's the problem, isn't it? Because if we live in a true democracy, that means that whatever works. It doesn't matter who came up with that idea. So the value, this opinion, like, to say that opinion has any value at all is just basically poisoning the minds of millions of people.
Yeah, but like I want to say something about democracy. You know, people say if we have a more democratic way, somehow it implies that something's going to be better, and this has been touched on by both Dan and Carlos. However,
by the way, if you can hear scraping, it's because it's cheesecake.
Yeah, I've just
cheesecake time.
Yeah, cheesecake time. However, yeah. So going back to democracy. So democracy started off in ancient Greece, and during the time of Aristotle, there's a 90% slave population. So the 10% at the top had to come up with a way, with their own differing interests, of managing their different interests and the benefit for their group above everyone else. And you know, it worked well for them for a while. Nonetheless, it died, and then you had a restoration of it with the Magna Carta in England. However, the Magna Carta was again just basically a negotiation between the king and the nobles. It wasn't for the peasants. you know, and in the time between those two events, it was Stoicism that generally ruled, and but democracy's always been about special interests. Because if you can the easiest way to control people is through their minds. If you control culture, you control their minds.
Yeah,
And division. So as long as you're dividing and ruling, and pitching everybody else against each other, all you need is 30%, 40% to win an election in this country, and most of those people are fairly easily manipulated. So there you go. That is democracy. That's how modern democracy is now defined. It is the illusion of choice. You know, it's like that picture of someone drew a cartoon of a cow, and it's got two doors left and right, and they both go to the slaughterhouse. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, in Portugal they say that the difference between left and right in politics is the hand they use to steal.
No.
So if they steal from you with the left hand, and then the center people, they use both hands. Which
Another quite poetic analogy I like is like going to bed with either a backstabber or a strangler, you know?
Yeah.
Or the Hobbes's choice, would you like a plate of shit or a glass of piss?
Yeah, well, okay. But
Answers on a postcard.
yeah, I prefer cheesecake. But the thing is that
Good thing's not chocolate cheesecake.
the fundamental idea here is that I would like to meet actually the genius that came up with this idea that a scientist should vote for fishing policy and the fisherman should vote for nuclear policy. I mean, like, who the hell came up with this thing?
Yes, this is my point. I'm quite passionate about. Like, you know, I've got into conversations before where kind of, if you follow through that kind of mob rule democracy idea, it means that, you know, you could have someone who needs vital heart surgery and the heart surgeon's ready to go and do it. But wait a minute, you've got to have a democratic conversation for the sake of it with a society of plumbers. You know,
Yeah.
this is the kind of thing we've got to get over. And I think that what is real is that a lot of people who argue that would betray their own beliefs to use the scientific method against what they think they promote. So, for example, if you go to the shop and you want to buy some food, are you and the person behind the counter going to have a conversation, a democratic conversation about your opinions about how much money might be in your wallet to pay for the thing, or are you going to use the scientific method and count? You know, this is the kind of rational, sane thinking, the rationality that we want to introduce.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Actually,
an interesting thing about humans is, so far, that we're good operating individually in small groups. We're good at operating in the now and the very immediate future, but we're not very good at operating on a large level, you know, strategically looking to the future. And if we're not able to, you know, develop this ability, I think that's going to spell a lot of heartache for us.
yeah, well, the thing about democracy is a very important subject because there's a lot of emotional connotation to democracy as well.
Yeah.
So basically, if you question democracy
Yeah.
out of the suddenly, you get all these connotations about dictatorship and armies and killing
Yeah.
people and terrorism,
Yeah.
whatever that means. And the thing is that, like, that's all emotional barriers. That's what I'm telling. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what we should not we should ignore and not use. Once we are, let's look like with all the cool in the world to democracy and be rigorous about it. You know, not have this romantic notion that, oh yeah, because it's not even freedom. There's nothing free in democracy. Because it's just like minorities being divided, so you can like just control them all. And the most important point that I would like to make about democracy is that people think that democracy is a good system against abusing power, but power comes with specialization, and we are a social species. No one can be perfect in everything. So we all need each other. So if we all need each other, how do we keep power from being abused? Asking our opinion to everyone about everything? That's the opposite of specialization. So the way I see it, what we should try is to address the motivations people have to abuse power. Not because power by itself is not a bad thing. What is a bad thing, or what doesn't accomplish the objective, is to actually have so many motivations to abuse that power. And that's where Zeitgeist comes from, with differential advantage. There's no biggest motivation for corruption than differential advantage. And differential advantage and corruption are the opposite of cooperation. And if we all have millions of examples of how cooperation can actually be used to maximize resources, there's absolutely no reason not to try to minimize the reasons to abuse the power.
Well, yeah, maybe I don't know many things, but the one thing I'm very sure about is that with cooperation we can't go wrong. And that's what we're promoting at the base.
Exactly, and that's the fundamental. Is like once you remove the motivation, and then you can, unless you believe that removing the motivation, and that's another thing, you know, like all the obvious arguments to solve these problems become against human nature, which basically means that I don't want to talk about it anymore. Yeah. That's what it means. Human nature. What the hell is that? It's like conspiracy theory, human nature, you know, that's impossible. They're all cop-outs. Never, always. You know, like, you're wrong, you're right. They're all cop-outs. Cult, you know, crazy.
You said cult so many times, I think you really suspect that you're in a cult.
Yeah, I am. But the thing is that...
It's like, you know, some people calling other people who are homophobic and they're trying to cover up their own homophobic
exactly.
Homosexual tendencies.
But all these terms...
You're weird.
Exactly. All these, they are just excuses not to try to understand other people. That's all they are. Human nature is the same thing. So unless...
Yeah, but human nature is interesting.
But that's the brilliant... the brilliance of it, just to finish, the brilliance is that it's obvious what we should do next, but that becomes against human nature, which is basically like just sabotaging the entire argument, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Because, you know, like, if the problem is abusing power, it's not power itself. Because if people wouldn't abuse power, if they have no motivation to abuse power, it doesn't matter if they are like nuclear engineers, whatever, but they can't have a bigger car, regardless of what they do, than a fisherman, why would they abuse that power? Why would the fisherman abuse that power? It just makes no sense. There's no motivation. No one does things with no motivation. Like, and once you tackle that, then you solve all these problems that democracy pretends it's trying to solve, but it isn't. The only problem then...
this is another thing that I think is very poisonous.
It becomes human nature.
Before I forget, that's what I want to say. But like, you know, one of the big problems is that with democracy, people seem to think, they've been propagandized to think that democracy somehow brings better things. And it's not democracy that gave people the benefits they enjoy in this part of the world. It's struggle. And
well, it's technology and energy.
Yeah, it's technology. There's also the utilization.
It's not capitalism.
Yeah, there's also the utilization of technology for, you know, it's an obvious social benefit to have clean water at the tap, stuff like that.
To finalize, and I would leave this as my last comment, is that usually we are faced with a very childish concept of possibility and of solution. So when people ask me, so what's the solution? I usually say a solution we know after the problem is solved. So if the problem exists, we can't ask what's the solution, it's what can we try next? And the thing to try next is arrive using scientific, as simple as. The concept of possibility and possibility, just to finish, is that the trick here and the balance is how to deal with something that I think in my limited brain is impossible without making it impossible through my actions, through my resulting actions. And that's the biggest question, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter if the wall is real or not. If everyone sees it and no one tries to cross it, then it becomes real. There's no difference between something I think is impossible in my head and something that is really impossible, you know, and something that is possible, but my head doesn't see it. So this childish concept of possibility is something that once it's tackled, will solve a lot of issues, in my opinion.
Right, in case time is a factor, if I can, I want to just run through the rest of the things I wanted to mention, just trying to stay on this vibe of giving the listener what we've been through in case it's helpful. I just wanted to say that, you know, my experiences at Occupy London and Bristol have been great. I did a talk on a resource-based economy in Bristol. I was there on the first day of Occupy London. An amazing feeling there, like really, really strong and powerful. Had great conversations at both of those locations I was just talking about. You know, I think we really injected the Occupy with a good dose of thinking, because a few days later, well, about a week or so later, there was the One show on BBC One at 7 p.m. This is prime time. Broadcast some footage from there, and they had a woman saying we need a resource-based economy live on primetime British TV, which was great. And I was also there we also got it mentioned on Welsh television nationally. I think it was the first time someone from the BBC on TV said the words resource-based economy. That was great. Anyway, I went to...
That was a mistake.
It was me.
you got fired.
It's all good. And I was also there on pretty much the last day of Occupy London as well, like inadvertently. I didn't know they were going to get cleaned away 3 days later. But when I was there was Kostas someone, I can't remember his surname, from the Birkbeck Institute, I think, and also someone from the Debt Jubilee group. The Birkbeck Institute guy was talking about Greece and the problems there, and someone from the Debt Jubilee group talking about the importance of debt forgiveness, which, you know, this is great. I'm glad they're doing that.
I should think you should mention, is the communists or the World Socialist Movement.
I'm coming to that.
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry to steal your thunder.
I have no thunder left. My point about the Birkbeck Institute guy, the Kostas, and the Debt Jubilee guys was, they opened the mic at St Paul's, and there was about 100 or so people sitting around, all listening attentively. And I said, I came on the mic and said, these things are true and they're terrible, but to me they're just branches of the problem. If Occupy's slogan is we are the 99%, that means we understand that we have the power. And if we understand that we have the power, that means we have the power to propose anything we like for the world. And if we have the power to propose anything we like for the world, surely we're only going to want to propose the most humane solution possible, right? And if we only want to propose the most humane solution possible, then I don't know anything more humane than a resource-based economy. And there was a big round of clapping and applause and general agreement, or at least sympathy for it. So I was really happy that from the start to the end, what we think has been considered within that sphere. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to be on the same page, but it's out there in the conversation. It can all keep getting talked out. I was also going to say that I've had good experience as well with the anarchist group in Cardiff. Went down to a screening of the NCIV film at the Red and Black Umbrella Squat, and I just want to counter what I was saying earlier on about people being dogmatic. We're saying this was another group of people I found who were really open, have a good conversation in a good way. They listen to each other. It's encouraging to see this overlap strengthening, because to me the bottom level is just I want to see people just have conversations in a way where they listen to each other until they understand what someone's saying. And also on the other side of the coin, you want to try and get to your point fast enough. If you're in a big group, that helps.
Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah.
And the World Socialist Movement, it's really good how the people we met in this area who support that, are really on board and saying, look, we want the same thing as you, it's just, different titles. And, that's something that should be strengthened. So the World Socialist Movement, if they want to talk with us more, great. Encourage that. when we've done media festivals here, that's gone really well. Like Vivak mentioned earlier, we had Killer Keller down, which was great. If you don't know, he's one of the best beatboxers in the world. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That the media festival seems to be a really good way to get across to people, because, you know, I've been neck deep in music my whole life, and I got to the point where, like I said, it isn't enough. I want more. And it's really good to have an event like a media festival where you have people doing music and information lying around as well. And it's just, you know, there's good stuff going on, but there's also a high level of thinking in the club, and it brings brings more meaning to the event.
It's different from in Cardiff. The music scene's got, you know, the mainstream music scene has gone fairly, you know, R&B clubs, what have you, and by offering something different. And this is the thing, you know, for those of you who are quite connected in your town or your locality, you know, you should set up events in which people are attracted to and go to, and they meet people. And if you're at those events then and you're holding them, obviously people are going to talk to you. So as a result from that, you just basically build bridges with people through conversation, and that's all it is. It's just about being a human being interacting with other human beings in a level that's conveniable, and you know, just looking to go for something more positive. You know, I gotta say, I mean, we're quite a small group in Cardiff. There's not that many of us. We've had a lot of people through our doors.
Probably about 100.
Yeah, and but like, nevertheless, I've met some absolutely fantastic people, and for that I'm, you know, grateful. And I think through this, it's a good way to meet with more. And you know, again, I think you know, given the holographic nature of the movement, where it's, you know, it's the idea, not, you know, your membership fee or something ridiculous like that, that matters. And I think through that, you know, you're not alone. You know, there's plenty out there like you who want to see a better world. And guess what? We're only going to get bigger.
Yeah, boy. And I want to say that reaching the present day, like, there's a unity of common ground now, which is just amazing. You know, it took a while for us to be emotionally intelligent in our meetings and talk to people out, you know, to the point where we felt everyone was heard, or do our best to anyway. And now we got to the point where people are pretty much on the same page, you know, agreeing on enough that you know, we can stop having to have conversations about what we agree on and talk about what we're going to do now. You know, we've done things, but we can do more. You know, the conversation about whether we're just talking or acting upon what we're talking about is another conversation. It does need to be talked about, and that's fair enough. But, you know, just this assemblance of people who are open and, you know, switched on, but also willing to listen to each other, it's new. I've never seen this kind of collective, cooperative, can-do, creative attitude before. You know, it's not about you know, we're presenting you an idea and you say, how do you do it? It's more like, here's an idea, you feel grateful for the new information, and you use your own creativity, your can-do attitude, to decide how would you mobilize a group of people in your area to try and get to the goal. How could you mobilize a global group of people if we're going to get to the goal? You know, your ideas are valued.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to pick up one of your points, and it's once you have a different perspective, where I was like referring before, you can change more than you think. You just, because if the entire like planet works in cycles and the society works in cycles, you just individually can feed the right cycles, and that will have, if a lot of people, I mean, like, I can't really believe that 2 years ago, if someone would say a bad thing about the club I was trained to like since I was little,
Football club.
Football club. I would get very upset, and now I just find the concept itself completely ridiculous, of being upset because some 11 strangers that, you know, like, that, I mean, like, wear the color that I was raised to like, that somehow I have any emotional attachment to them. And the thing is that, like, once you're not feeding those cycles, like, maybe without like this awareness, I would like somehow feed some violent or antagonizing like sports related thing. And there was obviously other kind of beliefs, but now, you know, like I won't feed that cycle. I don't see myself, and I won't go back. And that's the beauty of critical thinking, is that once you start, you never go back.
Yeah,
There's
once
no-
you find this level of quality of conversation
Yeah.
or interaction with people, you don't want to do less than that.
Exactly. I don't know anyone that has been in a state of lower like critical thinking. Like for example, a member of a religion that came out and went back again. You know, once you get out of dogmas, you're not coming back unless obviously like something happens to your brain. But I'm talking about like a regular like majority behavior. And to be honest, I don't think I'm ever going back. And that's the important thing as well, is that it's not so much like the activism, it's your individual personal life. I mean, I had loads of examples, work and family, of people that told me, say, your ideas, like the way you are, like, it just, every time there's a football discussion, my family now, it just straight away ends with me saying,
Yeah,
you know, you see what I mean?
I was in work once and somebody said to me, he found out I support Swansea City, he supports Liverpool, and he started like, he's from the Tidwell, by the way. So like, he said, oh, you know, I'm taking the piss out of the fact that I support Liverpool, Swansea City, as they do. And like, I just said, you know what, I don't base my identity on the achievements of others. And he just poured cold water over the entire conversation. And just stopped it right there. You know, and I think it's like demonstrating that kind of like behaviour that makes people look ridiculous in a sense, in a non-aggressive way, obviously, but like
It's a killer statement. Though.
yeah, but like you know, it's that kind of thing.
Well,
And,
it's a good example of actually not feeding the cycle.
yeah,
And that's what I tend to find now when people, because before I was just feeding whatever cycle. If someone would come to me and said, oh, this politician robbed this, and I say, yeah, we should like, you know, make a revolution or something, we should arrest them all and stuff. And now I just completely go against like the trends. I just say, okay, so why did he rob? What do you mean? I don't care. Why,
It's 'cause
because
he's
he's
evil.
corrupt. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's evil. Well, define evil then.
Yeah.
You see, like
You.
exactly. Besides me, and the thing is that like once you start decomposing all these people, even if it's a large group of people, even I've managed to do this in a group of 10 people. I was the only one there that actually was not ready to jump on the horse. There was actually ready to question the direction of the horse, and suddenly people say, oh yeah, no, I understand, you know, like they're just like, it's the system and stuff like this. And once people stop being concentrated on the players, they can pay more attention to the rules of the game. And that's what we're talking about. There's no us against them here. There's no evil. There's no like 1%. They're all playing. We are all playing the same game. So what we need is to address the game.
And I really agree that the game can be stopped at any time.
yeah, and you know, just again to reiterate, you know, for those of you who are in like a locality where there isn't many of you around, or you're thinking you're on your charge and what have you, you're not. All you got to do is, in the best way possible, given your limited resources and time, of communicating with others and touching other minds. I think that's the main thing, really. You know, we all have our different approaches. We all have our different strengths, skill sets, whatever you want to call them. You know, just play to that, and I think from that will emerge new possibilities and new outcomes.
Yeah, and if your area doesn't feel ready, you know, fair enough. You don't need to try and push a boulder uphill, but just put out information out there, like I said, to gestate and kind of get people thinking themselves. And you can do other avenues of activism if you want to do that. You can email people, you can, you know, drop flyers in places, or you know, whatever. Obviously, there's those.
Or like I said before, a high velocity, low drag approach, where you're just hitting people challenging some of their assumptions on the odd occasion in conversation, and leave it at that.
Yeah, that will like do a lot more than you think, because then people will be prepared to notice things they never noticed before because they were not made aware of
exposed to new information.
Yeah.
So you know, some of them it's not going to work. Others will work. Great. There we go. You know, no point breaking your back, walking one person to the pearly gates, so to speak. So
work with the people who are interested, not the ones who aren't.
Yeah, because sooner or later, they'll. I mean, like,
we'll get critical mass and become the norm. So, this is the thing. So, you know, for those people who are saying we're not moving fast enough and all that, for goodness sakes, how long have we been around for? Literally 5 minutes. So, you know, and we're only going to get bigger, we're only going to get stronger. There's plenty of this out there. You know. Just stick with it, guys.
And my advice in terms of an approach.
And yours.
It's my advice in terms of an approach is basically don't try to when you are actually trying to understand someone else's point of view, don't try to define if it's right or wrong, because there's an emotional connotation there. They might interfere on the learning process. Try to understand fully why libertarians think the way they think, why communists think the way they think, why anarchists think the way they think, their backgrounds, their influences, the way they were raised, the kind of TV shows they watch, how, you know, like, because everyone is born ignorant, and everyone can be raised into believing anything. It's just like, it's like, environment is king, isn't it? And then, just without any judgment, just try understand exactly the way they are working, so you can empathize better with those people. And then you obviously, when you try to go to the action side of it, define objectives, and then see if their way of the actions they derive from the way they think, if those actions achieve better those objectives or not. But if you have different objectives, I'm not going to argue a resource-based economy with someone that thinks that someone that has the objective of killing half of the population. There's no real point in that. So once you understand how people think, then try to set a common objective. If you can't find a common objective, move to the next person. You already, like, if you try to understand someone, really understand something, and you pose questions that are on the sense of understanding people, you already induced enough cognitive dissonance in that person, because she's not used to someone try to understand her. Usually people are used to, when they have a strong ideology, they're used to fight. So if you try to understand them, usually your questions are like in a way that it's non-confrontational, and that already disarms people straight away there. And you were, with your questions, probably going to induce a lot more cognitive dissonance if you engage in what they're used to, of conflicting ideas.
Beat them with their own stick, in a sense.
Exactly. Once you've done that, if you can't really like lower your objectives until one that is common, then move on. But I think that it's very likely that you are able to go to a common objective, and then see which method will actually, but with no judgment. There's no right and wrong. There's only objectives and better ways of achieving it. That's it.
Just want to try and cover what I've got left here on my notes. I think to any thinking person, all roads lead to the Zeitgeist movement. Right now, that's my bold statement. Doesn't mean I'm shut off to other ideas. It just means I've been paying a lot of attention to this, and I'm not seeing anything more focused. But once again, titles don't really matter. But I do think this endeavour, whether you title it Zeitgeist or not or whatever, this endeavour to try and get everyone to unite and face the elephant in the room problems is number one priority on the list right now. And I can't see. Obviously, you need to do things in your life for balance, not put all your eggs in one basket. But this matters. So this is our little coverage of what you might call success. Maybe you do agree, don't agree. Please feel free to comment and let us know what you think. There's other places like the Italian chapter who've been doing hydroponic systems with
Amazing
people.
stuff.
We can move on to things like that.
Yeah, there's so
Things
much
like Zeit
amazing stuff.
News, amazing. The Cybernated Farm Systems by Douglas Millett. Shout out to the eatforfreeprojects.org. Wade Heames from around this area is inspired by the Venus Projects, wants to try and get a scheme going where you pay, say, £300 up front and then you get free food, like maybe indefinitely. You know, go and check out the website if you're either in the Cardiff area and interested in that, or just interested from the approach he's taking. And I also want to just big up everyone for making the effort and putting a huge amount of awareness out there. I think just the evolution that's happened over the last few years for this is amazing. And you know, if you're ever feeling like, you know, you find it difficult because you're labouring at this, you know, one, you should take a break, but two, also think that the controversial ideas you're putting out there make life interesting. And you know, without it being there, once people are coming into contact with it, if it's not there anymore, they're going to notice the difference, because this isn't bland conversation one way or the other. I think that's pretty much what I had to cover.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end.
Yeah.
This.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank
And
you for listening.
and sorry for not shaving. I didn't have time.
And sorry for rambling.
Thanks.
Yeah, I should have shaved.
Yeah. Bye.